Welcome to Season 2 of Silas Reviews. Now, you're probably wondering, what am I watching? Who is this dumbass kid? Well, wouldn't you believe it, this was me in 2016. Yeah, times have really changed. He wasn't a liberal. Now, the thing to note with this video is that a lot of people think this is, probably the oldest footage you're ever going to get of me. But that's not actually true. I've actually done quite a bit on the internet besides being the first ever person to make fun of DK oldies and let it be mainstream. Now you're probably thinking, well, what the fuck could you possibly be meaning? Well, even though this is the earliest you'll ever see of my face, I've actually done quite a bit. Mainly in the 2010s, 2013 era, where I logged onto a bunch of different game-making websites to try and make my own video games. And that was actually a big obsession that I had for a little bit. Like, I signed into Scratch, couldn't figure out how to fucking use the tools, and still to this day, I have issues using Scratch tools. I was able to manually program a title screen, but I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how to use fucking Scratch. And of course, I also have the old Roblox account every kid had. But there was one site that meant a lot to me. That site being Sploder.com. Sploder.com is a create-your-own video game website that is primarily based in Flash, and all you have to do is just drag and drop stuff in. Unlike Scratch, there actually is no programming required. So with Scratch, you still have to do like, oh, if this, then that. Sploder's literally grab the player, put it in there, put a bad guy there, coin there, boom, done. There was no programming. And I used to have a pretty old account on Sploder.com. Registered in around 2013, when I also made my first ever game. Now, luckily, you can still play these games to this day, as the website's still up. Sploder Revival is going to be lasting for a while. Flashpoint, you can still play them. Yeah, so almost every way to play these fucking games is either no more or not going to be available. And what sucks even more is Sploder Revival announced that, hey, we're gonna have to shut our shit down a day after I made my video. Now, I personally don't think it was my fault, but I think it might be my fault because I was the only person to talk about them in a week. Now, you're probably wondering why I told you all this lore about Sploder.com before I even said what the fuck it even is. Well, because Sploder was a really big part of my childhood. Again, I really wanted to make my own video games when I was a kid. I need to eat this fucking popsicle. And seeing that it is shutting down, pretty much, and there's no way to play these games anymore, is a real big shame. But I think, talking about it and having an overview of basically what this website was like will do it some justice. To tell people what they practically missed out on before they were probably even born, because most of the people who watch this channel are fucking 2 years old.
Here we are, on the main page of Sploder.com. A homepage I'm really familiar with, especially this Make a Game button. Now clicking this will take you to the types of games you can make. Now all these games varied on the type of games you can make. You had retro arcade, platformer, physics puzzle, aka platformer, classic shooter, and no one used. Now each of these were very, very different, as you can just tell by the thumbnails of these. And I'll show what the difference with most of them are, but I'll talk about, and because this is a review, I'll talk about how each one controls, the soundtracks of each one, and just some general other notes with them as well. So why don't we get started with the first one, Retro Arcade. Now, arcade sucks, I'm just gonna say it. Arcade's controls are not fun to play with. With this little test platform section, turning around alone without taking more than like 3 steps is already difficult, but jumping when you don't have at least 2 blocks of movement is a real pain, and you will slip up and fall. And it almost seems like the character's hitbox is not like a square, but a circle, so they slip off one by one platforms quite easily. But besides that, it's honestly not that bad. As long as you're not doing tight platforming, It should be fine. And Arcade is actually one of 2 that have unique soundtracks. Yeah. And the music is... it's alright. It's not bad. Now, do I have really anything else to say about it? No. Because I never really played it that much when I was a kid. I was always busy with platform and physics puzzle. Which, speaking of platform, that's our next one. Next up we have Platformer, and Platformer was the one that I probably used the most as a kid, as it's easy to just drag and drop random shit into the playfield and play around with it. And of course there's a button to add your own graphics. That's what that little weird G in the corner is. And I used to use that, and I don't know, made my character look like a balloon. Now, of course, I do have fond memories of platformer games, but it's just not quite there, and there are several glitches, like if you slash your sword and hold down the jump button, you can climb walls and actually go up pretty far. But still, it's still a pretty decent game mode. It's still a pretty decent game mode, and overall, it's a fun little time waster to make your own little adventure, make your own little platformers, and, I don't know, challenge your friends with it. Way better than the arcade one, I could definitely say that. And why don't we go on to the next one? Physics Puzzle, aka the supreme platformer. Physics Puzzle is probably the most complicated out of the bunch, but it's still easy enough to learn, as a game called Peter Goes to McDonald's was fucking made in it. And honestly, this one is the most fun one, because there is so much variety you can get out of it. You want Peter Goes to McDonald's? Fine, have it. You want a kid who just celebrated 2014 happening, so he's on his Enderman bike? Sure. There's a lot that you can really do with this one, and they were always my favorite one to play with. Make, however, yeah, they were a giant pain in the ass, because there was so much stuff you had to do for it to even be, like, beatable. Like, you had to change a goal. How do you get to the goals? I don't fucking know. I did it in the gameplay footage, and I still can't describe on how to get there. There's just a little too much, but also, like, it isn't hard. It isn't scratch levels that difficult for a little 8-year-old to figure out. But it's definitely up there, even though they are the most fun. They are the most fun, and luckily, those are the ones that I was actually able to archive in zip files. So, luckily those ones are preserved, including Peter Goes to McDonald's. A world without Peter Goes to McDonald's is a world not worth living in. And if this is the only pieces of found media for Sploder, I will be gladly happy that Peter Goes to McDonald's is not fucking lost media. Now, I did forget to talk about the music in the platformer section, but both platformer and physics puzzle share the exact same 200 plus music cat library. Yeah, there are over 200 tracks of music by like 5 different people. The most common name you're going to be seeing is Vim. Now, some of this music, the second you hear it, you immediately know, yeah, that's fucking Sploder music right there. While other tracks, you're like, no one used these songs. And actually, the music you've been listening to in this video is music from Physics Puzzle and Platformer, because the music is just so damn good and is also copyright free. You won't get a copyright claim for using them. And there's over 200 tracks to choose from, so, I mean, come on. Now, the next games we're going to be talking about are kind of weird because no one really messes with them, because they're not as fun or as customizable as the others. Now, arcade wasn't really customizable, but you could do quite a bit in it. But classic shooter, But Classic Shooter and Algorithm Crew are very, very limited in what you can do, and are for their specific genre. Classic Shooter is a shooter, Algorithm Crew is a top-down shooter. They're both shooters. While with Retro Arcade, you know, you could do platformers, you could do whatever you want with it. And with platformer and physics puzzles, you can literally do whatever you want. You want to make platformer, you want to make a hack and slash, you can. So you won't really see too much for Classic Shooter or Algorithm Crew. Now, I know I made at least one game in Algorithm Crew, and I didn't enjoy it. In Classic Shooter, I don't even think I touched it as a kid. So yeah, my opinions for these two are going to pretty much be my main opinions. All the others were a mix of my current opinions and my old opinions with them. While with these ones, these are strictly my new opinions and how they would hold up today and not how they held up back then. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. This one's very, very basic. It's pretty much just shoot. That's about it. I legitimately don't have any thoughts on it, and I can definitely see why I didn't really play with it as much. Because why would I? There's no replayability with it as physics puzzle or platformer. So yeah, it's very, very boring. And our next one is also not as good. And our next one being the Algorithm Crew. Algorithm Crew was very, very boring. I placed down each one of the doors with like locks and stuff to test each one. Yeah, the puzzles are not fun. They are quite annoying. And honestly, I would probably have to say Algorithm Crew is the worst of the bunch. And another thing with Algorithm Crew is that it also has its own soundtrack as well, which is kind of neat, I think. But really, it's not that good. It's not that good. I can see why I didn't really play that one all that much either. There's just not much to it. And it's not and you can't be as creative as with the other ones, because you're just stuck with your preset walls and stuff. While all the others, you can edit graphics, you can really do a lot and pretty much make your own games. While with Algorithm Crew, it's a top-down shooter, that's what you're getting. And that was pretty much it. There's some parts of the website that are gone, like the multiplayer game that doesn't work and has never been archived. And also the graphics editor, which I don't have anything to say about it, because there isn't really anything you could say about it. It's just a pixel art GIF creator. But still, Sploder is a very unique and fun website to revisit from time to time. You know, check out some of the games and play them. But now, since there isn't really a way to do that anymore, it kind of just like lost its value a little. Like, people will always remember this website for what it is. A kids game creation tool. But it will always live in the hearts of all those 2010 and 2013 kids that got their hand at trying game development for the first ever time that wasn't Scratch level difficult. Scratch is like coding in fucking C. It is complicated as hell. And with that also ends the first episode of Silas Reviews Season 2, baby. The archive, the zip files of all my old games will be in the description. Only the physics puzzle ones, because all the others you can't download a zip. And also, I don't even know if they'll work. But you could always give them a shot.